I'm your host, Mr. Jeff, and welcome to the High One Talk Show. In this talk show, in this talk show, we're going to be discussing various, but of course interesting topics and controversies that are happening in the modern world. Now, the modern world faces a lot of problems, from small ones to big ones, like gender inequality, which is going to be our topic for today. So let's give a round of applause to gender inequality. Okay, so without further ado, let's welcome our main guest for today's talk. Here we have Professor Gaita Batka Tagung Blata. He is a leading expert in sociology and philosophy from Anderson University. So, Professor Reinhardt here has been studying this field and, of course, in gender inequality for years now and has published a few books regarding the topic, including the polar roles of life and the man and man. So, welcome to the show, Professor.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Jeff.
Okay, women. Okay, before we get any deeper, let's talk about something more general. So, let's introduce gender inequality to our viewers. So, gender inequality is a hot topic that's being discussed nowadays, especially in Indonesia, regarding its effect on the economy, on education, and other sorts of aspects. So, I'd like to know about your general thought on this.
Yes, of course, thank you, Mr. Jeff. So I suppose I'll start with my general thoughts on the topic. So of course, I do believe that there is a social imbalance of gender inequality in Indonesia. And of course, I think its effect, and particularly the younger generation, is quite devastating to both young men and women of Indonesia.
Okay, so I noticed you used the word young men and women. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yes. So, are you implying that it only affects the younger generations?
Yes, well, that's not particularly what I'm saying. Of course, gender inequality will of course affect the older generations also, But since the modern working world is made up of mostly the younger generations, I believe that this topic is more well suited for the younger generations.
Okay, so by relating to your book about the polar roles of life, I'd like to know your perspective on the roles of men and women in society.
Okay, so the roles of men and women in society. Because the masculine and feminine role is both very important and particularly distinct from one another, from each other, pardon me. So, here's the thing. Men are usually more goal-oriented. They focus more on their work and aspirations as they are aroused by purpose and ambition. Now, women, on the other hand, focus more on relationships and social interactions. That's why women usually have a more caring nature than men. Of course, this is visible in lots of aspects in life, from the workplace to the household. But of course, this isn't to say that men can't be house husbands or even women can't be CEOs. It's simply to point out that the core revolves around different things.
Okay, I partially agree with that. I actually have statistics here that say that 60 to 70% of the workforce in Indonesia are actually men. So, what's actually the reason behind this? Are men more capable or intelligent than women are?
Yes. So, why the majority of men, why the majority of the workforce is men is because, as I've said, men are usually more goal-oriented, goal-oriented. And to add to this argument, now women usually usually limit their career life as they usually choose the family route, as in becoming full-time moms. Arguably one of the hardest jobs in the world actually, becoming a mom.
So now, so let's move on to another aspect, education. So I mentioned intelligence in my previous question, so let's get deeper into that. So since you've already also mentioned that men are more goal-oriented than women are, so does that mean that they deserve a higher level of education more than women do?
Yes, regarding education, well, my answer to that question would be no, actually. I believe that education is a basic human right for both men and women. Because many great achievements can be made by both men and women in the pursuit of education. Because as again, we can see this in history, many great achievements in history have been made by both men and women.
Okay, so we're getting deep on this, so let's move on to something more general. So I'm sure that all of you, including Professor, of course, have heard of the term ladies first. Okay? So, what is actually the origin behind this phrase, or basically anything about it?
Okay, so for the phrase ladies first, coincidentally, I've also done research regarding the origins of this phrase. But unfortunately, I've found no reliable source regarding its emergence. But of course, I do have my own speculations regarding its beginnings. Now, you see,
You see,
biologically, the male species is relatively stronger than the female in terms of strength, and so as a sign of courtesy to the female, the male would allow the female to go first. Because I myself agree and do believe in the phrase use. I believe it's a sign of politeness and respect to women.
So, I'm sure all of you are bored by now by listening to all about theories, phrases, and all that stuff. So, let's move on to something more real. So, I'd like to know the real life examples of gender inequality, especially here in Indonesia.
Okay, yes, of course. So, real life examples of gender inequality in Indonesia. So, the most obvious cases of gender inequality in Indonesia is, for example, cases of violence against women from their significant others. Now, some men, some irresponsible men, might see themselves as above women. Irresponsible men, And so, because of this, sometimes they will force their wives to do stuff, because physically and mentally abuse their wives. Now, this is bad. Now, to add to this, according to Komnas Perempuan Indonesia tahun 2019, there was as much as 431,471 cases of violence against women. Of course, this is very bad. Now, to add to this, women are also more prone to sexual violence, which is of course a big issue.